Hi, I'm James Williams and this is Chimes Media with the appropriate flags. And there seems to be so many people these days, the clanking cup with the spoon in it. Okay, well, a number of things to talk about. I wanted to start off with Tommy Robinson, and there's a number of people campaigning in different ways. I was appalled to see the state of him. He's gone off on a holiday, a couple of weeks break. He was looking, he's lost over 40 pounds in weight and stuff like that. It's absolutely shocking. It's something out of Belsen. And so I did write to my MP. I gave her a lot of things to work through. So I don't expect a reply anytime soon, but Penny Mordaunt's a very good MP, very accomplished, and one of the better ones. So I'm sure she'll come up with something. But she's a government minister now, so she has to toe the line a little bit, So there we are, politicians. Okay, well, I did actually contact Amnesty International because they were really silent. Nothing said about it. They're supposed to be an organisation for political prisoners and people who are suffering the hands of some barbaric regime. And here we have the UK, supposed to be the sort of cradle of free speech and everything else, acting in a barbaric way, in my view. So here we go. And I wrote this letter to them. I said, I am an independent amateur journalist and not a member of any political party or association. 30 years ago, I used to letter write to political prisoners through Amnesty. But since then, Amnesty seems to have changed. It has the appearance of being partisan. Recently, Tommy Robinson was released from HMP Onley, having endured shocking abuse by the UK authorities. His case was slammed by Lord Chief Justice Burnett as being procedurally badly flawed. Independently, I sent a series of paid-for emails, 40 pence at a time to send emails to Onley Prison or anywhere else for that matter. Anyway, it must be for the printer paper, I suppose, I don't know. Anyway, he paid for emails to Tommy in the spirit of what Amnesty used to do. But I have seen no official statement from Amnesty. There were no approaches made by Amnesty concerning his safety. However, there was a lengthy interview of an Amnesty official by the BBC about the treatment of women in politics. Now, I do not believe myself to be partisan. I see a human first, not their gender, not their political beliefs, and not their sexual orientation. Can today's Amnesty claim to be the same? Because I have heard rumours of discontent from grassroots people who think you have become very selective. And I did get a reply back from Amnesty, sort of courteous reply. Dear James, thank you for getting in touch with us. We agree that everyone has the right to a fair trial and due process. This is a complex and continuing case, and we do not have the resources to follow it in detail. We are therefore not making any comment at this time. Your occurrence will be logged in accordance with our feedback policy and will be read by senior members of staff and our board. Now, from the 30 years ago when I used to write to political prisoners, the consideration then, they didn't have all the communication, they didn't have all the internet and stuff like that they got today. So it's not a case simply of saying, well, we're considering whether it's worthy or not. No, if they're political prisoners and they're being abused, then Amnesty used to, I believe, stand up and say something and highlight their grievances and their problems, regardless of their views. But it seems now, well, we're going to look. It's a complex case. Let's look into it a bit more. We're not going to make any comment. That's a fudge. That is not what Amnesty was originally about. Amnesty was about addressing abuse of political prisoners, and that, to me, even though it's only 5 or 6 lines response, that as an admission that Amnesty are selective. No money coming from me to Amnesty. No, I'm sorry. They've changed their ethos. They've fallen in with the bad guys, and they've abandoned principles of caring about political prisoners, unless you happen to be a political prisoner of a different type of regime or something. You know, that's they don't like. But no, they're very selective. No, disappointed with that. Steven Pinker, if you know who Steven Pinker is, he's a Harvard academic, a writer and author, Canadian-American. Well, anyway, he was on a panel with someone, I don't know, he appears all over the place, and he's obviously a clever guy. And what I like, one of the things he's known for is referring to, I don't know if it's his idea or not, the left pole, right? So basically behind this concept is, you know, you get a North Pole and a South Pole as on the Earth, and if you're at the North Pole, every direction is south, right? So he referred to a left pole, you know, so what means that if you're at the left pole, every direction is right. This is his way of explaining, and that's kind of a clever idea. I think it's quite an interesting way. So if you're anywhere where a leftist is not ideologically positioned, you are right wing regardless. I mean, he cited on one occasion Christine Hoff Sommers, who's regarded as some sort of right wing Nazi or something, which is complete nonsense. She's one of the most rational people around, you know, and she's a feminist, but she's a rational feminist, not a crazed one that hates all men, you know, and seems like the haters have taken over. So yeah, that's his bent. Now, what actually got me is actually he actually said that it was in reference to Milo being deplatformed and denied appearing at academic institutions to do talks and that. So he was opposed not simply because Milo's offensive. He's entertaining, of course. Milo is. I think he's enjoyable to watch, but some people find him offensive, not their taste. Anyway, but it was because he's not an academic. Now his belief is, as it was on this particular panel talk, is that if you're not an academic, you shouldn't be appearing at university to talk. I think that's very elitist, don't you? I think that's really elitist. Tommy Robinson, for example, we talked about him earlier. He was invited to, this is a couple of years ago now, I think it was. He was invited to the Oxford Union to do a talk about his position. Well, it might be more than 2 years, doesn't matter. But he's not regarded as an academic, but they had the humility to invite him. You know, a controversial figure at the time, well, he still is, of course, but they invited him to talk. Now, I think that's credible. I think that's a tremendous thing for the Oxford Union to do that. They've invited Katie Hopkins along to talk, you know. So Rees Mogg, who is a bit of an academic, he's been there. There's a few people, but the thing is, I like that. I think that is embracing different ideas which may be considered offensive to some people, but they're putting them on stage and allowing them to talk and answer Q&As and things like that, you know. That is the way to do it. I don't think that Mr. Pinker's or Professor Pinker's attitude is well, let's bar people who aren't academics. I think that's really closed-minded. It's very snobbish. It's very elitist. And you know, you've got, where do you draw the line? Because there are professors who call themselves professors, but they've got the qualifications to whatever, and their subjects like gender studies, which I'm very highly critical of, gender studies, or what is it, African studies, or whatever it may be. You know, there's not the accreditation for it. There's not an objective-based, reason-based subject. It's opinionated right the way through. They shy away from statistics, and you know, things like gender studies. The thing they avoid is biology, the one subject the scientific subject which has some semblance of objectivity about it. They don't like that. Yet they're allowed to be professors, and therefore, by Mr. Pinker's view, he's actually saying, well, they can appear on a platform. So they can come out with all sorts of hating men stuff, as they often do, how evil white men are. And interestingly enough, when they say that, they say, well, you have got white male privilege. You can't win. You know, white male privilege, therefore you can't understand anything what it's like to be a woman or a black person or anything like that. And yet, they obviously don't know what it's like to be a white male by their own an admission, if you like, and yet they have courses set up about toxic masculinity and all this stuff. You know, the other way around, we're not qualified to say anything about women or about black people or anything like that. But they are fully qualified to spew out loads of lies and nonsense based on no evidence at all or very poor research and get away with it. So according to Mr. Pinker, they can do that. But somebody who actually then comes out on, like Milo, and challenges them, who's quite good at challenging it, and he throws it in their face and annoys them as well, which is always entertaining. You know, they're not allowed to speak. I think that's elitism and snobbery. And not only that, it makes you wonder if, clever though, likes of Professor Pinker, he's not the only one, clever though he is, does he actually meet ordinary people? Does he actually meet ordinary people, or is he in a little ivory tower? I see this with Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro sort of often has a slag off against Donald Trump. Well, okay, you can have your own views about Donald Trump, like or not like him, but he doesn't simply, you know, disagree at all. He slags him off as an academic, or he doesn't know anything, he's stupid and things like that. This is a guy, like it or lump it, who had the greatest victory in terms of achievement, becoming President of the United States. You know, against all odds, he did it. And also, he's a billionaire, made, and yeah, a lot of people think, oh, he inherited the money. He was lent $1 million by his father, turned it into 10 billion. So that's an achievement. Something to do with the parables there, isn't it? Sort of like turning talents into more talents or whatever it is. But, you know, so Ben Shapiro slags people like him off. Now, if he's disagreeing with him on policy, I can understand that. But that, to me, that's a personal attack. And he's got this sort of attitude. This sort of thing between Alex Jones, as you probably know, the InfoWars got banned by all sorts of things, and it's raised his popularity quite a lot. But Ben Shapiro was saying negative things about Alex Jones, not so long ago, and putting people off like Jordan Peterson appearing on the show, things like that. Well, Alex Jones has a right to be angry about it. I don't like the way Alex Jones handled it. He was a bit OTT with these little threats and stuff. But no, Ben Shapiro demonstrated there that he himself is a snob. He's an intellectual snob. If you're not one of the elite Harvard types or whatever it is, then you've got nothing to say except to be shot down or ask a question like a good little boy or girl, you know. And I don't like that. So there's a few things I don't like about Ben Shapiro. He's a really good debater, but only on certain subjects. If you take him off his subject of constitution and law, then he goes into the wilderness a bit. And I think everyone's got something to say to some extent. They shouldn't be deterred from appearing anywhere just because they're not academics. There's quite a few people who have been not academics and come out with some good stuff. So yeah, that sort of... Now, a bit of news there. I don't know if it's still news because it's a few days old, this. Hungary, the country Hungary, not to do with food. All right, basically, gender studies programmes are to be banned in Hungary. The Orban regime introduced legislation to shut down accredited gender studies programmes offered by universities in Hungary. The ban will primarily impact students at Eötvös Loránd University in Budapest, which is the only institution in Hungary other than the Central European University to offer gender studies at the graduate level, and the only one to provide this programme in Hungarian. The number of students impacted by the ban is small, but okay, we're talking about a few dozen, right? Okay, bans. If you don't like gender studies, and I've already slagged off about them, yeah, fine. But you have to have sort of, you can't be sort of selective and say, well, we just don't like you, we're going to ban you. There has to be reasons for it. And when I was way back, yonks ago, in university, the social administration degree course, which I wasn't doing, I was doing something else, was threatened to be demoted from a degree status to a diploma status because the objectivity of the course and the way it's set up was poor, and they were given so much time to improve on it. Well, gender studies, as I've said, I doubt very much the credibility of this gender studies. it seems to be, and there's a lot of these types of courses, postmodernist, hate-filled, rhetorical propagandists. That's all they are. They're like indoctrination groups, and they don't seem to brook much sympathy for people with different opinions and views and different arguments. So yeah, they need to be looked in. I think to me, they've contaminated the university campuses, and quite contrasting. And they are starting to affect other subjects. There needs to be some sort of standard that they have to meet, and if they don't meet that standard, then they get defunded. That's the way to do it. Say, well, I'm sorry, we're not paying for that because it's taxpayers' money. Well, why should my tax money go towards supporting a course that hates me? You know, why should I support courses that are against, you know, that condemn me as being white, male and privileged? I don't want to pay money for that. You know, I'm not doing that. That's just not acceptable. That's just propaganda nonsense. So anyway, yeah, I'm not against that at all. Right, so, oh yeah, the thing about Pinker is, another one about Pinker is, he believes in the patriarchal oppression of women, okay? That over time that women have been oppressed, they've been denied voting rights. Well, you know, this is again him living in an ivory tower, because if you actually took the trouble to look at women being oppressed in the past, everybody in the past had it bad. I was at a philosophy group a couple of weeks back, and it was said, well, what freed women up was education. And I said, no, I disagree with you on that. Before in the mid-20th century, should I say, from then onwards, up until that point, and still after that point, women's lives, domestic lives, were kind of very brutal. Everything was done by hand. Everything. You know, all the cooking, washing, preparing for 6 kids and a husband, all that stuff, done by hand. It was tough work. You know, many women died in child labour. It was a really mean thing. Education had sod all to do with that. It was technology that improved women's lives. Having a washing machine, having a hoover, having a fridge, having a cooker. That's what made the difference. Not education. Education was reserved to the middle class women, who, I have to point out, and shouldn't have to, the suffragettes weren't for women's voting in suffrage universally. They were for middle class women only having votes. They didn't care a damn about bloody working class women. They didn't give a damn about them. The working class women worked to make their family function. They had it tough. They had it tough, I should say. And if you want to read a good book, an accredited book by a proper journalist, George Orwell, Road to Wigan Pier, read that. That's a good read. That is a really good read. Gives an insight into what it was like in the working conditions of working class people. And he decried these so-called socialists that are supposed to be representing the oppressed, when these lot are living a different type of life to everyone else. Nothing's changed. That's how it is now. Okay, that's enough of my rants. Till next time, take care of yourself.